I just have to tell my news lady that I'm on a phone call. Otherwise, she will be fucking texting me
All
through
right,
this thing,
we are
the whole thing.
we are live, guys. Want to give a shout out to Spartan sitting in here, supping stuff. The Happy Plague Doctor. Welcome to Conflict Radio. We're just I've got a few people with us. We're bored out of our mind on Easter Sunday. Hello, Happy Easter to
Hey.
everybody here. We've got Chrissy Newton with us and Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio. Dave, how are you doing?
Hey.
I'm good. I didn't know we were live, so I accidentally swore there. I apologize. I apologize. Oh, goodness. Feel like an idiot, but that's okay.
We'll throw that into the algorithm right away. That's okay. No worries.
Exactly.
Tony Franson's in here. We were bored out of our minds and decided to just come at you guys with a live show. Hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Chrissy, let's start with you. Why don't you tell everybody real quick who you are and where they can find you, and then we'll go on to Dave.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Sorry, my dog here trying to jump around. I am a publicist. I own a company called Vocab Communications for the past 11 years in Toronto, Canada, but I work in the States and Canada. I also am the media director now and a contributor for The Debrief. So I imagine most of the people listening around this kind of show and topic follow The Debrief as well. So I work with them. I'm also on a UAP podcast called the New Frontier Network with a group of international UAP researchers. I am one of the Canadian side. On the Canadian side with Victor Vigiani, which is a good friend and an amazing ufologist. And I'm also on another podcast called Alt Pop Repeat that is on Dash Radio in the States. And that talks about countercultures and pop culture.
Awesome.
So we do a whole bunch of different things. And you can find me on any social media at Miss Vocab, MISSVCOB. COAB. Wow. Like I don't know how to spell there.
Well, we it's not like we had anything planned. We're just kind of throwing this out there for everybody. Whoever's bored on a Sunday is free to join us. Dave, why don't you tell everybody who you are and where they can find you?
Well, I'm on the other side of the country from Chrissy. I'm in British Columbia, Canada. I host Spaced Out Radio, which I've been doing for over 6 years here in trying to bring the strange and unknown back to nighttime radio. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes I actually get a day off, but today is not one of those days on Easter because I'm just hanging out in the studio here, and you called me up, and I'm like, heck yeah, let's do this thing, man.
Yeah.
So anybody can check us out Monday through Friday at spacedoutradio.com. We are on a few terrestrial radio stations. We are on YouTube live as well, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time. Once again, Monday through Friday on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and I think I've subscribed to my own self, so I'm all good there.
All right. You know, I subscribe to myself too. It works out pretty well that way. If there were only like 100,000 more of me, I'd be really good kicking my butt. Why? So, Chrissy, this is the first time you talked to Dave, isn't it?
Yeah, Dave, I never knew that you were in BC. So hello, fellow Canadian. That makes me happy to hear that.
Let us wave the maple leaf proudly as we start bringing on the UFO talk. And, you know, you mentioned Victor Vigiani. He is a great friend and someone that I very much look up to. And, you know, you're in good company.
Yeah, I love Victor. I met Victor through a friend of mine that used to work for NASA. It was an aerospace, I guess, trainee or trainer for aerospace. At NASA. And I was at an event, and he introduced me to Victor, and then Victor introduced me to Paul Hellyer, and I introduced my dad. My dad's loves ufology as well. It's a family thing between him and I, and then Victor and I stayed friends ever since. So, you know, I always say he's like a mentor to me in this because he knows so much. And so usually if I have to bump up like ideas or talk to him or ask him questions, I usually call him. And we go for lunch and we go for walks and we just talk about UFOs.
It's a great thing. It's a great thing. The best part of where I live in British Columbia is I am an introvert. And so I just literally do nothing. I just kind of hang out and do my own thing. And being out here on the West Coast where I'm kind of in the middle of nowhere, I'm about 5.5 hours northeast of Vancouver, it's an area where we have a lot of UFO sightings, a lot of hauntings, and a lot of Sasquatch type activity as well. So I'm right in the middle of running the gamut of all the weirdness and strangeness that I love. So it just makes it a little bit more comfortable when you can, keep your group close and the monsters that are among us even closer.
Yep, 100%. Especially when they're Canadian too, because there's only so many people that, like, a lot of people like ufology, but there's only so many people that are in it that are Canadian. There's a lot of us, but there's a lot more people in the States, I find, which is really great.
Oh yeah. It's still, and I think a lot of people. You bring up a good point. Sorry, Mike. I hope we're not just dominating.
No, go ahead.
Over the show.
That's the Canadian in us. We got to apologize for everything.
Right.
Excuse me. But I think for the most part, up here in Canada, we have a real tough time in trying to bring these subjects to the forefront, because the one thing Canadians are very good at is we're very good at not talking about things. Yep. We just kind of sweep things under the rug, and if we don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. I mean, unless it's hockey, unless it's anything that kind of affects us. It's just a weird country that way when it comes to the strange and weird. Like, even in my little community where I live, one of Canada's top alien abductions happened, probably about 10-minute drive south of me. And there's people in my own town don't even want to talk about it. It happened back in like 1988. People don't want to talk about it, or they're like, oh yeah, I heard about that. And they just shut up. But it's amazing, as people in my little community, and it's only a couple thousand people, find out that I'm the weirdo of the town, they always want to seek you out and say, hey, what's happening here? Have you seen this? Or all of a sudden I'll get a message on Facebook or a text message saying, hey, need some help with this. What do you do? So it's kind of weird. Everybody wants to keep it private, like nobody wants to talk about it publicly.
Yeah, and same with media. They just started catching on. Canadian media is so slow to get especially when it comes to UFOs. So when you had Fox breaking everything, and in recent news that's happening around the 180-day report and asking questions, to Senator Marco Rubio and former intelligence John Radcliffe, talking to them, finally Canada decides to pick up, 2 weeks later about UFOs. So the Canadian press did something about 5 days ago, I think they did a recap of sightings last year of UFOs. And then there was another piece in the entertainment section, which I found was really funny, in the Toronto Star. And then I heard something on News Talk 1010, but that's all I've really heard so far. Minus NJ, who works at Debrief. He's Canadian too, and he covers tons of, but he is the exception from everything that would even be Canadian and UFO coverage. But not many people do. And I'm like, the media, get on it. Like, you guys are so slow.
So do you guys?
Here's the thing. May I? Oh, go ahead, Mike, please.
I just wanted to ask real quick. Do you guys have like your own cable news channel up there, or do you rely on strictly Fox or CNN?
We have tons of them.
Well, here's the funny part. As a former member of the Canadian media, this is one thing that I will say is I've been in the newsrooms here in Vancouver when those phone calls have come in about UFOs or ghosts or strange things. And usually what happens when you're sitting in the media room as a reporter and that phone call comes in, the first question you usually ask is, how drunk are you? How high are you? Right? Yeah, okay, thank you for the report, and we'll see, we'll make some phone calls on it. Those phone calls mean we hang up and we do nothing about it. Now, the interesting part about it is, a week ago, I was on a show in Vancouver during the day, which is really weird, with one of the political analysts on a radio station called CKNW 980, and Michael Smith was the host. And in the 12 minutes that we were on the air talking about Ratcliffe, and we were talking about Rubio and the 180-day report, not once was I asked a question about what's happening in Canada. And if you actually look at all the Canadian media, this is the funny part. Not a single reporter has asked any politician of substance about Canada's UFOs. Yet every major station that we have up here has covered the American side. Oh, look what's happening in the U.S. regarding UFOs. Look at the Navy. Look at Rubio. Look at Lou Elizondo. Yet not a single reporter has gone into Ottawa to ask Prime Minister Trudeau or Defense Minister Harjit Sajjan or anybody about the UFO reports. Or more importantly, what is Canada's role in this? Now, we have a bunch of sub-media outlets that are out there, okay? There's me, there's Victor Vigiani, there's MJ, there's like 4 of us. You can add Chrissy to that list now. There's like 4 of us that are doing this. Ryan Stacy out of just north of Toronto as well with the Tessa group. But that's it. That's all we got. And yet, if you dig deep enough and you get the proper sources, you end up learning that there is this entire underworld that is happening in Canada regarding this subject that is so secretive that they can have it right out in the open and nobody is talking about anything. And that's why they love it, because Canadians are so focused right now on COVID. They're focused on their own lives. We pay a hell of a lot of taxes. We're both members of the family, have to work in order just to pay rent in cities like Toronto or Vancouver or Montreal, that they don't have time to worry about UFOs or Bigfoot or if their house is haunted. It's weird.
Yeah, I agree that we don't really care a lot as Canadians about this topic, which is crazy because it is the biggest topic in the world right now, I would say. Maybe I'm biased, but I think, unidentified flying objects flying around in the sky and we don't know anything about them, and flying over military bases, that's like nothing to be concerned of. But, it's very Canadian. I agree. It's very, very Canadian. Shag Harbour, same thing. It happened in like 1967. We don't even talk about that. We also have, it's crazy. We have a UFO on a commemorative coin. And a limited edition commemorative coin. Yeah, and I think I went to buy one, and there was only 1,000 made. But I think it's this. Don't quote me, but I believe it was the second one. But I know for sure it was a couple of years ago. And I'm like, come on, guys. I'm like, we have a UFO. It was glow in the dark, which is hilarious. A commemorative coin of a UFO is on it, crashing into the water. based on a Canadian story, that we have around in ufology, and we don't talk about it. I think though it's going to start being a conversation because the States is putting so much attention on it that we're just going to have to. And I agree that ourselves and other media need to push a little bit harder. So we'll see. Once the 880-day report comes out, I believe that Canadians will. And at one point, this will be a topic that one of the parties, if it's either the Conservative Party or the Liberal Party, I'll probably say it's the Conservative Party, will attach themselves to the UFO conversation just for votes. Not because they might like it. Maybe not. But I hope that they do like it, and they want some, disclosure in our own country about this with our own files. Right. Even though we've opened up a little bit more, I don't know as much that we've opened, but compared to other countries. But we'll see what happens. I just hope it's not a political stunt, to be honest.
Well, why do you figure it's the Conservatives?
Well, so here's the thing. I had this conversation in a clubhouse that we had with the debrief, and we tabled it with a whole bunch of people. And we look at Fox. Fox is very much, doesn't mean that like Canadians are conservative like Fox. I'm not saying that, but we do look at it and the type of person that apparently so here I should back up. The question that we had was, why is Fox News covering this so early? Why? Why? It's not June yet. They got on it so early and pushed for statements from them. So we kind of analyzed if it was the news outlet doing it or was it the Pentagon coming forward or the government coming forward and pushing this. But it wouldn't really make sense for them to do it because they're not ready yet. Why would they try to create some buzz? So we assumed that it was Fox, and Fox was looking at that as something about getting ratings, we think, and grabbing that audience, grabbing the UFO audience, so everyone's going towards them, so they own the market. And when you look at Fox, you wouldn't be served that they would be more conservative. no one kill me over here. Not saying that every conservative person likes Fox, but the demographic would ring true to that. And we'll see that maybe in Canada as well. But, that's what I say. I just think that they'll be more slanted towards that conversation than the Liberals. That's a personal opinion. Doesn't mean I'm right.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. And, there, like I said, we need somebody to open up. But what we need, though, up here in order, Chrissy, to have that conversation is they don't need a Dave Scott. We don't need an MJ Banias. We don't need a Victor Vigiani or a Chrissy Newton. What we need is a major reporter from a major news outlet to stir this up, to grab onto a blog or something that you've written or I've written or MJ has written to make it happen. Real journalism from a real reporter. Like I'm a freelancer, okay, and MJ is still up and coming with his journalism skills. Even though he's more of a school teacher, and that isn't insulting to him or the debrief or anything like that. I'm taking a shot at myself here too. We need somebody who is very well in depth with the political scene in Canada to actually grab one of our stories and make it their own, whether they use us or whether they don't, because that's the way it's going to get. This story in Canada is not going to get TV coverage. TV coverage up here in Canada has turned very clickbaitish. You need an old school reporter who knows how to do investigative journalism. You need a newspaper reporter because they have the ability to do a feature and or the room to write the article properly. So radio is out on that. All right, because radio is more for entertainment purposes. Television has become what am I more offended by today in a clickbait sort of way. So it has to be a newspaper reporter with political ties to jump on this story, to delve deep into it, where they can use their political sources in order to confirm or deny what's happening. We can write all we want, whether it's you, whether it's me, whether it's any of the people out there who are covering this up here in Canada, but we're not going to get that attention as, say, a political reporter for the Toronto Star, the Montreal Gazette, the Vancouver Sun, the Globe and Mail, National Post. It's just not going to happen that way.
Well, I would say if the Agenda picked it up and had a roundtable conversation about this, or just picked it up, the Agenda on TVO, then I think there would be a bigger conversation there as well. If CBC picked this up and roundtabled it as a conversation too, it would have a lot more attention to it. I agree that it does need to be broadcast on television at some point and have a larger discussion, because it's not that I don't think Canadians are really aware of UAP activity and what's going on. I just think it's not really embedded in our culture. It's not stories that everyone talks about. People are interested in it, but they don't really know a lot about it. Interest is different than knowing other facts, right? So I wish that Canadians knew a little bit more, and maybe they will after the 100-day 80 report comes out, and maybe there's something substantial in it, that is enough. And maybe we can talk about that too, of what everyone thinks might be in that report and what they're going to release or what they won't release, if they're going to ask for an extension, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Dave.
But
Dave, I'm sorry.
One day, I think there will be more Canadian media activity in the coming months, because they can't. To be honest, you can't ignore this topic. And if they do, other Canadians will start asking questions, because if the American media outlets are covering it everywhere, from, CNN, Fox to, from New York Times again to Washington Post to you name it, Canada is going to follow suit. It just happens.
But Mike, quickly here. But Chrissy, you have to understand the Canadian media has already covered this story. They just
not very well, though. That's the thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is but you have to realize, even in the United States, this is a story that no media outlet has wanted to cover. Even Fox News, they're only debating what's happening in the recent news. They haven't
Right.
looked into anything in the past. That's because the majority of media outlets either A, do not want to cover this story for the fear of ridicule, or B, they don't know how to cover this story because they've made fun of it for so long, and that the prototypical person who sees UFOs or them that are aliens is the night shift worker at the gas station or the 7-Eleven or the Walmart who has never made more than minimum wage, has no dental plan, and believes that everything is a conspiracy and has everything tinfoiled in their house. That's the way the media looks at this story. It's changing that education. It's educating them to look and see how this is reported. That's why we need a political reporter in order to get in on it. Like I said earlier, like the outlets here have covered the American side. They covered the Tic Tac, the gimbal, and the Go Fast videos. They were blown away. Great ratings. Yet nobody in the Canadian media asked any politician, any minister, or the prime minister about this story. It hasn't been discussed, and that's the flaw. How do you get that
not
on
in
the
regards
table?
to the way, not in the regards into the way that it might affect us as a Canadian, as a country, right? And if there is this threat conversation that, that is really, really in the mainstream right now with UAPs. So no, we're not. We haven't had that at all. But I think it's coming. I'll say I think it's coming. Yeah, I think it's coming. You can't get away from it. You can't, especially when and I will say, like, Americans for sure with American media they've covered it way more than we have. For sure, they haven't asked certain questions, right? Because of ridicule, also lack of knowledge. There's a lot of information. Once you can start looking into ufology, you're like, oh my God, there's like a database of so much content that you could just read for years. So, it's like a wormhole of just content, or a rabbit hole of content. So no wonder they're confused. They also, for sure, the ridicule's there, but the ridicule's, it's not as much anymore. It's,
that is true.
Scientists can look at this in a different way. We're trying to get down that path. We're trying to make it more academic. We're trying to have those conversations so that people feel that it's approachable and they can start asking questions why, rather than people telling them that they're crazy because they're either seeing something or they believe it or they've heard about it. So I don't know. I'm really, really optimistic in the way we're going. I don't know what it is, but when it comes to what a UFO, like, obviously the term, yes, but what's actually going on? No, none of us do. And that's where we're going, but it's exciting. And to be honest, I'm excited that I'm alive during this time while this is all happening. I'd rather be living through this now than maybe, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true.
Dave, Antonio wants to know what you think the disclosure is going to be in July, but isn't it May 1st?
June 1st.
June 1st?
I think it's June 24th.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Right.
It's in that month of June. I hate to break people's hearts, but we're not going to get anything major out of that. You got to realize they're already, from Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon on down to the people we don't know, they're already asking for a delay on this release. The reason why is they say they're not prepared with the information to go out. Well, that means one of two things. Number one, they're trying to figure out how they can cultivate the story, Mike, in order to make sure that hard questions aren't answered. And number two, they have to go through absolutely every piece of information to see what they're going to either redact or not let out to the mainstream because they have national security to worry about, right? Look, people need to be understanding that no matter what happens through this entire subject, what's going to happen is I'm getting distracted because my dogs are barking upstairs and I can't stand that. I apologize.
That's all right.
What is going to happen here is they're going to give us a little bit of a drip. They're going to give us maybe another video of some military fighter. We're not going to hear of anything that is outside of military bounds. We are going to hear everything to do with the military because if you look at it, they have taken this subject the last 3 years since the To the Stars Academy came out and then the New York Times released it, and the Navy confirmed those were their videos. They are going to keep this as military as possible. They are not going to be having any information that deals with cases like Betty and Barney Hill, cases like the Phoenix Lights, Shag Harbour that was mentioned earlier. We're not going to hear any of that. And it's unfortunate because that's a different timeline. That is dealing with people who are real people having real experiences. And so far, they have really tried hard to separate UFOs from extraterrestrials, which they've done a great job with the new term UAP. They have done a great job at separating people who are filming UFOs over their houses or over the mountains or strange lights from what is happening with the military. If you hear Marco Rubio, you hear Mark Warner, you hear John Ratcliffe, it's all about the military. That is why they are going to drip it into us. We'll probably get another video or two that the Navy or the U.S. government is going to release, and then we're going to say they're working on it. But I see that date being a very big day of disappointment for us. I hate to say that. I want to be positive, but it's just not looking that way.
No, I think you're right. And David M. wants to know, is the Shag Harbour incident an unidentified sea object?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, it was yes, I guess it didn't come out of the water. It crashed into the water.
Yes. It's a yes and no answer. Yes, it was there underneath the water. No, it came from the sky, and people saw it as far from Maine, from coming on in, and then it just seemed to go and crash into Shag Harbour Bay. Now, here's an interesting thing.
Yeah, and so we should tell them Shag Harbour is in Nova Scotia too, so they know where the heck that is in Canada. Yeah.
Yes. Here's the interesting thing that I would like to see, and this has been kind of bouncing around in my mind because I know a submarine crew who did a Discovery Channel episode. The submarine crew's out of Vancouver, and they did a study with Richard Branson on the deep blue hole of Belize. And I just thought it would be so cool to get a hold of this company to say, hey, let's go look for some UFO parts in Shag Harbour. This is a huge event that happened. Nobody talks about it. It crashed in the water. Who knows if anything's still there? Why don't we check it out?
Let's go. I'll get on the next plane.
So it was a
scuba gear on and get down there. I didn't know that actually. I never even thought of that. That is brilliant.
It would be a great Discovery Channel documentary to see if there is still UFO parts hanging out in Shag Harbour. Now, of course, after 50 years, I'm sure the Navy on both the Canadian and the U.S. has gone down there numerous times to check for things. But you know what? Much like Roswell, they're not going to get everything. There's going to be some pieces there. What might be there? It makes for one hell of a potential documentary, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So it crashed
How
then.
deep though at Shag Harbour?
Oh goodness! I'm telling you right now, with my fear of great white sharks, I am so not going in there.
We'll get you the James Cameron submarine, the 2-person submarine, and we'll go down.
I saw Jaws. Jaws took down a helicopter. I am not taking that chance.
Oh, come on, Dave.
No. I'm good on land. I'm good in the air, but not underwater. Especially with the way the great white sharks are now starting to move up into the Nova Scotia area quite frequently now. There's just no way in hell I'm doing that. No way. Not happening.
I'll do it with you, Chrissy.
I was going to say, Michael, thank you. I appreciate it.
You guys go, have a good time, eat your sandwiches, wait for Jaws to attack, and maybe find some UFO parts. I'll watch from the screens above.
Well, we're in Nova Scotia. We're going to have some lobster and crab and all those wonderful things.
I'm there for that. I am so there for that.
Yeah.
So how long ago did this crash happen?
1967, I believe.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Now, here's the interesting part. Here's something very interesting. It happened on October 3rd or October 4th, 1967. And it was 3 weeks after Paul Hellier's government, I believe he was under Prime Minister Diefenbaker at the time, was kicked out of office from during a federal election. Now, 6 months previous to that, Paul Hellyer was in charge as the Minister of Defense in Canada when the Falcon Lake incident happened with Stefan Mikulik, where we actually have a plethora of evidence from that interaction between that UFO and Mr. Mikulik, who was in Manitoba when he came across a craft. He was out doing a little bit of amateur geology looking for certain rocks and came across a craft which he thought was something of the Canadian military or the American militaries, and investigated. It ended up burning this weird pattern of dots on his chest that lasted, came back, disappeared, came back. But that clothing and everything is still with Chris Rutkowski, I believe, at the University of Manitoba. Wow. And so that happened under Hellier's watch. And then a couple months later, during Canada's centennial on July 1st of 1967, I believe it was around July 3rd, Hellyer actually traveled to St. Paul, Alberta to unveil and dedicate a UFO landing pad for the city to say everyone, including aliens, are allowed in Canada. Then, of course, Shag Harbour happens right after his tenure as Minister of Defense. And all this stuff happened. And yet Hellyer, to this day, will say to you at 95, 96 years old that he knew nothing of UFOs until he left office. Nothing. I don't buy it for a second.
Well, didn't you have a minister come out up there and do disclosure like a few years ago?
Yeah, that's Paul Hellyer.
That's Paul Hellyer, yeah. Yeah, he was the former Minister of Defense. He actually was supposed to be Prime Minister, too. He might have been. He ran against Trudeau. Not this Trudeau, obviously, the first Trudeau. But he ended up losing. And then I believe after he became the Minister of Defense.
Do you guys like Trudeau? Do you trust this guy?
I've met Paul. I've sat with Paul. I trust Paul. I just feel that when you're almost 100 years old, why are you going to take something to the grave? I don't, and I think if he really did know something, I feel, Dave, and I could be wrong, I think he would tell it in one of his books. Or if before he passes, maybe he will, or when he does pass, maybe someone will publish a book that he's written that he wanted to wait till after. I don't know, but I do trust Paul. I like him. I think he means well.
Yes.
And I respect that. I don't know exactly how much he knows, how much intel he knows, but I respect him for coming forward and, shedding light on what was going on and being one of the first people within government around the world, outside of Nick Pope's attachment to government and whatnot. But I do respect him for that. And he is a really lovely man. He is. And a lot of people are like, oh, he's losing his mind. And no, he's not. Paul's very sharp. For being his age, he's really sharp. And he still writes books to this day. I think he actually just has a new book coming out soon, or will be. I'm plugging his book right now. I haven't bought it myself, but I believe it should be coming out, or if it hasn't come out already. He did have one book that was his last one, but that's what he said. But then I think he's recently released one, or will be soon.
Well, I have an email from Hellyer because I had to do some investigating on some stuff, and he was nice enough to actually respond. And the person who set me up with this basically said to him that I didn't believe him, that he didn't know anything while in office. And I will never forget this. I'm reading the email right now. It says, P.S. I don't have secrets, at least none that I talk about. So that tells me that he's got a few secrets still up his sleeve due to NDAs that he will take to his grave. But I think Chrissy is very right. I think we've needed Paul Hellyer to come out, but it's time also with Paul closer to 100 than to 90. It's time for someone else in this country to step up and come on out and let us know.
So let me ask this: do you think that it's possible that he's got like I guess your Sunday night host Dave is Michael Hall, right? He could have a whole
Yes.
trove. He could have a whole trove from this guy that he's just waiting to release until he passes, right?
Oh goodness. Who knows? I mean, Paul Hellier's the type of guy where all of his stuff will probably end up in a library somewhere. And that's what I see happening. We're at a university. He's a very educated man. And when his time on this planet is up, hopefully it's not for a few more years because I think he has a lot more information to give. I think that a university will scoop it up quite quickly. Chrissy, I'm sure you'll agree with that.
Yeah, I do agree, 100%.
Awesome. So, Dave, why don't you tell everybody what you got new going on with your channel?
Well, right now I've started a brand new feature on Spaced Out Radio called True Tales, and it's been I've only done one episode of it. And if you're into the creepy pasta type stories that I tend to fall asleep to every night because I like that kind of stuff, I decided that I would take it a step further and that I would create my own for my channel, give a little bit more entertainment on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/spaced out radio. Sorry for the plug there. But I decided that I would start these tales of people having these weird, strange occurrences. We do them. I did the first one last week. The second one will premiere on Monday, April 5th. And we just going to see where it goes. I'm getting a lot of attention on it. So it's been a lot of fun.
Chrissy, have you ever had any strange tales or experiences that you could tell Dave about? Maybe he'll have you on the show.
Yeah, I have actually, Dave. I'll save it for Dave's show then. I have had something. It's actually with an ex-boyfriend. There was two of us, and it was in Kitchener-Waterloo, just outside of Toronto, and it was during the day. It was a backyard sighting that we thought it was. We're not sure. I don't know if it was a UFO or not. I didn't send it to, I believe, Stu at MUFON. I didn't send it to the Canadian MUFON side, but for sure had some weird activity around it, along with some other planes that kind of came at it. So I'll share that detail one time with you, Dave, if you want to chat about it.
I would love to.
All right, so let me ask you this. Let's just say when the 180 days is up, the United States government comes out and releases a whole bunch of stuff that makes it pretty obvious that UFOs exist. Do you think the Canadian government will just go along with whatever the United States says, or do you think that maybe they'll still keep you guys all in the dark?
I think we're waiting to see who's going to go.
I hope that they
Go ahead, Chrissy.
Yeah, I was like, I think they'll go along. Like the mainstream media up here has no choice to cover because the States has. They can't just turn a blind eye because people will be like, "What are you doing?" And that's not. If it's super topical, they should be covering it too. And stations should be around the world. It's just a best practice, not just our own country. But outside of that, we'll see. I think what Dave said, we'll see what politicians do. And I feel that in the next coming elections and things will happen. I think UFOs will be a conversation. I do feel that. How can it not be? Especially when you're having so much attention on the States. And here's the other thing. Maybe that Canada hasn't properly been briefed on what's happening around the world. Maybe they don't know. So at some point that will have to happen from, I don't know who it's going to be, but there will have to be some briefings that might have to happen at some point to catch people up to what's going on. And that could be tons of people from the States to do that with Canada. And then along with having our own conversations about it with our own political figures too. I fully agree.
Who would you be able to listen to up there and trust?
Ooh, I'm going to let Dave answer that one.
Me. No, when you say listen to and trust, I think it comes down to this. Canada is a real follower of a nation. We don't like being at the forefront. All right. We love being that supporting cast to anybody. Our military has always been a supporting cast, whether it was going back to the world wars or even what's happened in the Middle East over the last 25, 30 years. All right. We've always been a supporting cast on everything, and we don't like being in the forefront. That being said, I do believe Canada has been read in on the UFO front, but once again, we are very, very easy to manipulate as people here, because if it's not in front of our eyes, we don't ask the questions. And that's where the government usually gets a handout. Like, give you an example. Our military, as small as it is, when we're on, there's a reason why we're called for the UN all the time when the UN was still putting patrols out. That's because the Canadians get the job done. They really do, in a different way than the American military does, or the Brits, or whomever. And we never hear those stories of the battles that Canadian soldiers were in, but they happen. But nobody asks questions. And that's the way it's just perceived that, oh, well, they're not going to ask any questions. If they don't ask any questions, we're not going to bring it up. We're not as media savvy. We're not as social media savvy about getting this up. We're more interested, it'd be like social media where it is today, and we're the Canadians way in the background still taking pictures of our food from Facebook in 2007. That's kind of the way it is up here, way behind. And I hear you laughing there, Chrissy, because it's true. You really do.
I love this country, but we're slow to the get.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but what if
We've always been like that.
What if it comes out that all of the UFOs that we think are UFOs is really secret Canadian tech?
Can you imagine? That's why we're not saying anything. That's why our government's so quiet. If that's the case, then we're the best country ever.
I suppose you never know.
I highly know that won't be the response. I'd laugh if it was just Canadians doing everything. Be like, typical Canadians.
Give a shout out.
Not at all. Not even close.
It's nothing we won't apologize for.
Exactly.
Yeah,
we've been saying sorry all the time, and it's embedded in our culture because we're sorry because we're hiding everything about UFOs. We're sorry.
It was the Canadians
don't
all along.
Don't that and promo it. Right? What?
It was the Canadians all along.
It's the Canadians all along. Yeah. Well, I'm excited that there'll be more Canadian ufologists coming out, into the system in the next little bit. I really do. I'm hopeful for that. They can't just be a handful of people. The more that the ridicule slows down, the more that people will be interested and start to really take this up as a hobby or a career. I really hope that one day that as we get closer, and who knows when this will happen, but there will be an actual academic study called ufology. Like, not saying that it's not academic now, but there's nowhere you can really study ufology. You have to do it yourself and through the community and all of that, and really embed yourself into it. But I hope that one day there is a place where you can go to university and actually study it and take a class or take a course or a program around it, because it's made up of so many different subjects: history, science, physics, culture. It's one of the most multicultural topics that you can interdisciplinary, topics that I think I've ever come across. I don't know anything else outside of ufology that has that many different types of careers embedded into one. That's why it's so hard to know everything, because that's why you have different types of ufologists, because they have to focus in specific areas.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I guess the different types of it that are out there. It's just, you get. There's so much you could research into just one topic. Like you have, Preston Dennett with the movie theater UFOs, and everybody kind of has their own little specialty that they research. It's amazing. I just want to give a shout out here to David M, Sec, Mr. Fox, Blue Chicken. Welcome to the chat. Tony, Fradston, and Spartan O Negative says it's up to the Queen whether or not you guys get disclosure or not. Is the Queen really all that involved in your political situation up there?
No. Maybe I'm wrong. Right. Yeah. No, she technically has to, we have our Governor General, but she technically has to sign in some of our bills. Like, it's just done in I guess what we've always done. But she does still do that, if I'm wrong, Dave, that she does sign off on in legislation, but she kind of just signs the bill. We make the decisions, but she kind of still has to sign it. But she doesn't direct anything down here, though. But we are
That's
still
correct.
attached to the country, though.
We are still part of the Commonwealth.
Yes,
which means
exactly.
when the Brits call to arms, we got to go.
Exactly.
Do you guys have to pay taxes to them?
Oh goodness!
Like, does
I don't
support,
think
you know
we
what
do.
I mean? Like
I don't know
like,
enough about my own culture in that. I don't believe we do. I don't think we pay taxes. From what I know, I believe no. That's all of our own.
Yeah, Canada is autonomous, but I mean, we still have the monarchy type roots that are here. I mean, I'm no expert on it. Believe it or not, it's not something that's even taught in school up here.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess
You
you guys should
Queen
have
or-
jumped on the bandwagon with us with that whole Declaration of Independence thing that we did, huh?
Well, you guys tried to invade twice and you lost. So
It was too cold.
It's too
true.
cold. We're all friends
We
now,
went
though.
up there. We were like, never mind. Let's get out of here.
You know what? The big thing is, when it comes to ufology, we all have to stick together. A Republican Democrat thing. Up here, it's not a conservative, liberal, or Democrat thing. It's a North American thing. It's a worldwide thing. And as long as the governments of the world are holding the information from us, that's why we'll never get disclosure. Look, full disclosure means that we know all. We're going to know if there's a list. And it also opens up to a lot of different conspiracies, too. The conspiracy of alien abduction, the conspiracy of Roswell, the conspiracy of whether or not, even though this one's hard to believe, but did Eisenhower have a meeting with aliens at Holloman Air Force Base back in the 1950s, trading humans for technology? I mean, it opens up a whole can of worms. And I think, getting back to the original topic of what we were discussing here, I think it all comes down to that's what they're trying to protect. How do we keep this conspiracy theorists in check while we give them little dribbles?
Well, I guess YouTube is getting a little iffy with the stream. I told you guys I wasn't going to keep you long. I meant it. You just want to wrap it up, and maybe we can get you guys on it again for another Sunday chat.
That sounds great.
That sounds wonderful.
Sunday chats.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a show I decided to throw up. I was bored out of my mind, and you guys agreed to join us, and we got quite a few people in here, but now it's telling me that YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming, and it seems like it's booting a bunch of people out of the room. So,
did you say there was someone named Blue Chicken in there in that group? The name was Blue Chicken.
Blue Chicken.
Blue de Blue.
That's great.
Blue Chicken is awesome.
I was like, Blue Chicken says. I'm like, what a great name, Blue Chicken.
And Spartan O Negative is here again. Canada in the East Coast was a bloodbath during the colonial days. Yeah, probably. Boo boo boo. And then David M with the saucers flew over the White House during the Eisenhower era. Yeah. So, okay, guys. I guess we'll wrap it up. Everybody needs to get back to their regular Sunday stuff. Definitely appreciate you coming on and chatting with us today. So we'll just let you go and thanks a lot. Do you want to, Chrissy? You want to tell everybody real quick again where they can find you?
Yeah, for sure. If you want to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, it's Chrissy Newton, or at Miss Vocab, MISSVOCAB. There we go. I said it right this time. Or you can check out thedebrief.org. I do tons of videos there. I have a show called Rebelliously Curious with Chrissy Newton, and it airs every Friday. So you can find me there as well.
Awesome. And that was a great little discussion, guys. Dave, tell everybody where they can find you.
Instagram, Twitter, everything is Spaced Out Radio and Spaced Out Radio Show. We're on Monday through Friday nights on YouTube on our channel and our website, spacedoutradio.com.
All right, guys, and we're going to try to do this every Sunday for a half hour to an hour, I guess, depending on who I can get in. And I think the fun part about it will be with Sunday chats will be I'll just see who I can get, like at the last minute, whoever's just bored sitting around. So, Chrissy or Dave, if you hear from me again on a Sunday, I'll give you absolutely no warning again and see if you have a few minutes to join us for a Sunday chat. I think maybe that's what we'll do. I'll just reach out on my Facebook page to whoever I see online and see if they got a few minutes. Remember, you can always find us on www.conflictradio.net. You can find us on YouTube, Spreaker, Apple iTunes, and all of your normal podcast catchers. Remember to batten down the hatches and be safe.